By the name above all names, Yahweh, I call upon the thrones and seraphim of the Most High. Shield this gathering in golden fire. I cast out all interference, deceit, evil, and any spirit not of divine order. May no spirit or energy cross this threshold unless it has been sent by the Creator of light and dwells in perfect service to the True One. By the solar seal of truth be banished. By the flame of Yahweh be consumed. And so it is. So, moving on to tonight's lessons. So we're going to discuss furthermore about discernment and how to use your spiritual discernment in everyday life. Now, we'll be talking about the false light versus the divine illumination. So, the false light mimics truth. It flatters the ego, uses spiritual language, but leads you into dependency or superiority. True divine light humbles you, expands your freedom, and awakens your sovereign will. Now, for an example, a person is preaching love and light, but always centering themselves, manipulating others subtly, and dismissing accountability as low vibration. To embody this teaching, ask yourself, does this expand my truth or trap me in their orbit? Let your heart be the compass, not their light show. So, moving on to the weaponized wound. So, this talks about how some wear their trauma like armor to justify control, projection, or avoidance of growth. So, discernment is knowing when to hold space and when someone is spiritually bypassing through pain performance. For an example, someone always blaming their past for why they ghost, manipulate, or wound others, but refuses healing, accountability, or truth. Hey, thank you for the follow. For an example, let's see here. So for an embodiment, right? Observe if compassion turns into enabling. Love must have boundaries. You can emphasize without absorbing their chaos. So, moving on to the frequency mimicry. So this talks about how entities, spirits, and even humans can mimic high vibrational frequencies or poses. Not every tingle or synchronicity or dream is divine. So for an example, right, repetitive numbers leading you to obsession, not clarity. Or channeled messages that stroke the ego without challenging you. Let's see here. Also, to embody this teaching, use resonance tracking. If it leaves you drained, confused, or addicted to confirmation, it's not divine. Now, moving on to the internal gaslighting. So, sometimes your mind talks over your intuition. It tells you you're being too sensitive or crazy when your body already gave you a clear no. Hey, thank you for joining the live. And then for an example, feeling uneasy around someone who seems nice, but ignoring it to not judge. That's how spiritual override happens. Absolutely, you have to be honest with yourself. And to embody this teaching, right? Pause, breathe into your body's truth. Your nervous system remembers things your brain hasn't labeled yet. So, Moving on to laughter as a compass, right? So this talks about how the true soul aligned spaces spark joy, realness, and depth. If you always feel tight, forced, or overly serious, check the frequency. So for an example, spiritual spaces that shame humor or demand performative enlightenment usually hide control under purity. So to embody this teaching, discern what lets your soul exhale. That's often more divine than what's flawless, right? Moving on to silence doesn't mean safety. So this lesson talks about how just because someone says nothing doesn't mean their energy is clean. The most dangerous energy can be the unspoken. So, for an example, passive-aggressive spiritual leaders who manipulate through withdrawal, fake calmness, or sacred silence, right? To embody this teaching, feel beyond the words, discern silence with presence. Sometimes the quietest ones scream the loudest in the spiritual realm. So, hey, thank you for joining the live. So moving on to the energetic hook, right? So people can energetically hook into your aura with gifts, sex, pity, or promises, especially if you're empathetic. For an example, so feeling guilty when pulling back from someone who did everything for you, but you know they're draining your soul. To embody this teaching, if you have to betray your peace to keep the bond is false. Cut the cords, return to truth. Absolutely, discernment to feel energy, 100%. It's a blessing. And this is how we sharpen it. This is how we get better at it, people. We always got to be aware of it. So, moving on to the next teaching, right? So, frequency of fear-based guidance. What is this book, brother? This is the book I've been writing. Absolutely. I'm just sharing some of my readings with you guys. So, for an example, no, we already read that too. Embody this ritual, right? So, frequency of fear-based guidance, right? So, not every warning is discernment. Some are fear projections. The ego masked as intuition when it's sacred of expansion. Hey, I appreciate it, you guys. So, for an example, avoiding a leap forward because your intuition says no, but deep down it's fear of rejection or failure. So to embody this teaching, ask, is this guidance rooted in love or in protection? Spirit never guides you in fear. It awakens you in truth. Hey, thank you for joining the live, you guys. Thank you for the likes. I appreciate all the feedback, dudes. So, moving on to the seduction of power posing as purpose. So this one's huge in today's age as well, you guys. So just because whatever glitters doesn't mean it's always gold, you know what I mean? So this lesson talks about how just because something feels empowering doesn't mean it's aligned with your soul. So power can masquerade as purpose when it's rooted in an ego rather than divine assignment. For an example, being offered a public platform, role, or partnership that looks like destiny but leaves you spiritually restless. To embody this teaching, right? Pause and ask, would I still choose this if no one was watching? True purpose brings peace, not performance pressure. So moving on to the prophetic ego versus the holy truth. So just because someone is gifted doesn't mean they are aligned. Many with psychic sight can still manipulate, dominate, or project. Prophecy without purity becomes spiritual abuse. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. For an example, a reader or seer telling you what's going to happen, but you leave feeling terrified or bound to their authority. Now, to embody this teaching, measure the fruit. A real prophecy uplifts, confirms, or lovingly warns. Never chains you to fear or dependence. Hey, thank you for joining the live. I appreciate it, you guys. So, moving on to the next teaching, divine timing versus demonic delay. So, this teaching talks about how not all delays are divine. Sometimes the enemy uses stagnation. This teaching talks about how not all delays are divine. Sometimes the enemy uses stagnation, distraction, or cycles of doubt to make you second guess your own path. For an example, feeling like you have to wait for more signs even after Yahweh already confirmed the next move. So, to embody this teaching, discern when waiting is sacred gestation or if it's spiritual stagnation. Movement can be obedience too. So, moving on to glamour versus grace. So this teaching talks about how glamour seeks attention. Grace walks with quiet power. Many spiritual influencers clock their ego in an aesthetic light, but have no fruit, no substance, and no presence. So, hey, thank you for liking the live. I appreciate it. So, for an example for this teaching, a person posting a daily high vibe messages but cannot hold space, receive feedback, or be accountable in real life. To embody this teaching, follow fruit, not filters. Grace leaves an imprint that outlives applause. So, moving on to the spirit of flattery. Flattery manipulates by inflating your ego. It masquerades as affirmation but has hidden strings attached. So, for an example, someone who overly praises you in order to gain access to your energy, platform, or spiritual gifts. So, to embody this teaching, to discern, does their praise reflect truth or strategy? Test their loyalty when they can't benefit from you. So, discernment of desires. This lesson talks about how not all desire is divine. Some desires come from wounding, programming, or trauma-seeking validation. For an example, longing for a twin flame who actually mirrors your abandonment issues rather than sacred love. Hey, I appreciate the follow. And then to embodiment of this teaching, ask your soul, is this desire from wholeness or from hunger? Let Yahweh refine your cravings into calling. Absolutely, bro. I appreciate you, man. I'm glad it's been helping you, bro, for real. I appreciate the follow. Stay tuned for more content, guys, every day. So, moving on to the agreements in the spiritual realm. So this lesson talks about how discernment also means breaking soul ties and spiritual contracts you never consciously agreed to. Hey, I appreciate the follow. see here. People, places, or ideologies can tether your spiritual unknowingly. So, for an example, feeling drained after a group ritual, sexual encounter, or mentorship and not knowing why. To embody this teaching, pray and decree. I break every unholy agreement made in my spirit, dreams, or unconscious realm. I reclaim my energy in full. Now, absolutely, bro. Absolutely. We speaking truth, man. That's all we speaking, man. We're using our discernment. We're teaching people how to use our discernment, how to sharpen it, how to use it every day. Keep you guys on your toes, man. Red pill, blue pill, bro. I'm telling you, man. Every day you gotta make a choice. You can't get caught slipping. So, moving on to when light speaks, but you can't hear it. Hey, I appreciate the follow. So, discernment doesn't always feel loved, right? Sometimes it's in the quiet knowing, the inner resistance, the subtle nudge to leave early, say no, or to pause. So, for an example, something seems perfect, but something in you just can't commit. So, to embody this teaching, honor the whisper. The sacred voice doesn't shout. It trusts you'll listen to your alignment. So, moving on to the false mirror of spiritual performance. So, this lesson talks about how some wear spirituality like a costume, knowing the language, but basically just talking the light. True discernment separates authentic embodiment from curated aesthetics. So, for an example, a person who always talks love in public yet creates chaos in private spaces. To embody this teaching, discern their consistency. Ask, do their presence or choices align in silence and in spotlight? So, moving on to the sacred rage versus reactive vengeance. So, this lesson talks about how rage is not always wrong. It can be holy fire when it defends innocence or exposes corruption. But vengeance that seeks to destroy rather than awaken is from the shadow. So, for an example, wanting to call someone out versus wanting to call truth into that space. So, to embody this teaching, channel fire through prayer, prophecy, and poetry, not destruction. Let Yahweh use your flame for justice, not ego. So, moving on to projection and prophecy. This lesson talks about how many give prophetic words from unhealed trauma, jealousy, or personal assumption. The divine never speaks from control or codependency. For an example, someone claiming, God told me you're my spouse, or you're cursed if you don't obey this vision. To embody this teaching, anchor to peace. Real prophecy feels like confirmation, not a condemnation. Ask your spirit, does this word honor my sovereignty and Yahweh's love? Hey, I appreciate the likes. I appreciate the gifts. So, moving on to emotional chemistry versus soul resonance. So, this lesson talks about how just because you feel emotionally intense around somebody doesn't mean they're your soul match. Trauma bonds feel electric but drain your soul's very essence. Hey, I appreciate it. You're awesome. All right. So, for an example, instant can't live without you energy that crashes after a few days or a couple of weeks. So, to embody this teaching, check your nervous system. Do they calm your soul or chaotically light you up? Discernment honors peace over passion addiction. Hey, thank you for joining the live, you guys. So, moving on to the false light teachings. So, teachings that bypass suffering, shadow work, or accountability may sound good, but they rob people of true transformation. All love and light becomes spiritual avoidance. So, for an example, leaders who preach positivity only, yet ignore real systemic oppression, abuse, or narcissism in their communities. So, to embody this teaching, discern the fullness of divine truth. It holds both grace and sword. Yahweh is not just comfort, he is also refiner. Now, moving on to manipulated mercy. So, this lesson talks about how some people weaponize your compassion. They know you're forgiving and they'll use it to remain toxic in your life. So, for an example, you'll have a friend who constantly apologizes but never changes, then guilt trips you when you set a boundary. Now, to embody this teaching, real mercy includes protection. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. Let go without letting them stay. So, moving on to testing the spirits of agreements. So, before signing on to any group, mentorship, relationship, or belief system, test its spirit. What unseen agreements does it require of your soul? So, for an example, feeling pulled into a spiritual community that seems positive but eventually demands silence, hierarchy, or blind loyalty. So, to embody this teaching, sit with Yahweh before making any soul tie. Ask, does this commitment reflect truth, freedom, and alignment with divine love? Now, moving on to desperation versus divine assignment. So this lesson talks about how if your decisions are rooted in desperation, whether it be money, loneliness, or validation, they will corrupt your discernment. So the divine doesn't need, it sends. So for an example, right, accepting a job, a new lover, or platform out of fear of missing out or going without. So to embody this teaching, right, anchor yourself in the provision of the Most High. Say, I wait for what is mine by destiny, not survival. So, hey, thank you for joining the live. Thank you for the likes. So, moving on to the soul versus trauma response. So, sometimes what we believe is intuition is actually a trauma-based response. So, true soul guidance is peaceful, even when it warns. So, trauma shouts in fear. Why did I feel called to work with Yahweh? Hey, the reason why I breathe every morning. That's just how it is. Like, it never led me astray, so I'm just out here just speaking. So, for an example, right? You feel uneasy about someone new. Discern if it's because they mirror a past abuser or because your soul is genuinely alerting you. So, to embody this, practice sacred pause. Place one hand over the heart and ask, is this guidance rooted in love or fear? Now, moving on to the energetic body lies. So, this lesson talks about how a person's words may be sweet, but their energy field tells the real story. So, learn to feel subtle energetic deception, whether their spirit voice doesn't match their spoken words. So, for an example, they say, I love you, but your body contracts. So, that's your spirit reading beyond the surface. Now, to embody this teaching. So, develop somatic awareness. So, if your gut, your chest, or your throat tightens, pay attention, write it down. Also, moving on to when charm becomes a cloak. So, this lesson highlights narcissists, false teachers, and dark energetics often led but with charm. So, discernment sees through flattery and substance. So, for an example, a spiritual mentor will flatter you excessively, but is always vague and refuses accountability. So, to embody this teaching, ask specific questions, discern depth by how they respond to challenge, not how they charm. Now, moving on to prophetic discernment. So, true discernment can show what has not yet happened. A divine knowing that whispers through the veil of time. Now, for an example, you dream of a situation before it occurs and instinctively know how to prepare or to respond. Now, to embody this teaching, keep a dream journal, strengthen prayer and meditation with archangels like Raziel or Gabriel to refine your prophetic senses. Now, moving on to the discerning manipulation versus the conviction. So, this lesson highlights manipulation pressures, conviction anchors. So, discern the spirit behind the message. For an example, someone says, if you don't do this, you'll regret it, versus this is aligned with your truth. To embody this teaching, trust what feels like a soul yes, not a coerced head nod. Now, as for the mirror test. So, the soul sees through projection, right? Sometimes what you fear in others is what you hide in yourself, or what you've healed and now repel. So, for an example, you assume someone is judging you, but they're actually reflecting your own insecurity or internal judgment. Now, to embody that teaching, practice shadow journaling. Ask, is this a mirror, a wound, or an actual red flag? Now, moving on to the discernment between guilt and responsibility. So, guilt is often a weapon. Responsibility is a sacred contract. Learn to differentiate when you're being shamed into compliance versus called into alignment. Now, for an example, someone says, "You owed me for what I've done for you," versus your own soul saying, "You can choose integrity even when others don't." To embody that teaching, practice self-inquiry. Ask, do do I feel free or enslaved by this decision? Now, moving on to the voice of the false light. So, not everything love and light is of divine origin. Some darkness wears white robes. The false light mimics holiness to extract devotion, attention, or energy. Hey, I appreciate it. For an example, a guru who speaks of unity but breeds dependency. A system that speaks of peace but thrives on your submission. Now, to embody this teaching, tune into frequency, not image. Does the teaching empower your autonomy or glorify their control? Now, moving on to the soul alignment versus people pleasing. So, people pleasing is self-betrayal in disguise. Soul alignment honors truth over approval. For an example, you hold back your real opinion to keep the peace, but inside, your spirit rages at the compromise. Now, to embody this teaching, speak your truth with grace, even if your voice trembles. Let your soul roar. Now, discernment, which is the fruit of a spirit. So, the true is known by its fruit. Examine what someone's presence creates in your life, whether that be confusion, peace, chaos, or awakening. For an example, a relationship that allows leaves, or the relationship that always leaves you anxious versus one that brings clarity and hard truths. So, to embody this teaching, ask, what grows in me when I'm near this person, belief, or path? So, what do you think is better to have, gold or silver as protection? I always wear gold, 100%. Always wear gold. So, moving on to discerning the fruit of a spirit. The true is known by its fruit. Examine what someone's presence creates in your life. We just did that one, my bad. So, discernment and isolation. So, sometimes the clarity comes after the crowd is gone. So, discernment often deepens in solitude, where no one's voice drowns your own. So, for an example, after leaving a toxic community, you begin to realize just how much of your thought was programmed. So, to embody that teaching, welcome silence, make sacred space for your unfiltered knowing to rise. So, moving on to truth as a sword and a salve. So, truth can cut and also heal. Discernment involves knowing when to speak, how to speak, and if it's time to speak. For an example, you sense deception in a friend, but wait until the right moment to gently invite clarity. So, to embody this teaching, Ask Spirit, is the moment of confrontation compassion or both? Now, moving on to discernment between empathy and energetic hijacking. Hey, thank you for joining the live. This lesson talks about how your compassion is sacred but not meant to be drained. Some people feed off your empathy without ever seeking healing. So, for an example, you keep helping someone who refuses growth, and you always feel exhausted afterwards. Now, to embody that teaching, just protect your energy. It is not cruel to set a boundary. It is holy. Now, moving on to the familiar spirits versus ancestral guides. So, not every spirit who approaches is an ancestor. Some entities wear masks, mimicking those we love to keep us in cycles. So, for an example, a voice that sounds like grandma but fills you with dread or confusion. Hey, thank you for joining the live. So, to embody this teaching. So, discern by vibration, not nostalgia. True ancestors bring peace, empowerment, and alignment. So, moving on to discernment between divine delay and spiritual interference. He said, not grandma. So, this lesson talks about how some things are delayed because of alignment, others because of energetic interference or internal sabotage. So, for an example, you're waiting on a sign, but deep down, you know you're afraid to act. So, to embody this teaching, ask, am I being prepared or am I hesitating out of fear? Then pray for clarity and act in faith. Now, moving on to the false prophets and the spiritual narcissist. So, this lesson highlights how some use spirituality to build empires of ego. They cloak control in charisma and power in prophecy. So, for an example, a spiritual leader says you must submit to them for your healing to happen. To embody this teaching, follow no one blindly, question teachings, test spirits. Yahweh flows in love, not domination. Now, moving on to discerning divine timing versus urgency spells. So, this lesson talks about how urgency can be a manipulation tactic. Divine timing brings clarity, not panic. So, for an example, a mentor tells you to decide now or lose your blessing. So, to embody this teaching, pause. If it's truly divine, it will not rush you into confusion. Hey, thank you for joining the live. So, moving on to the seduction of spiritual aesthetics. So, this lesson talks about how looks can deceive. Just because it's wrapped in crystals, feathers, or ancient language doesn't mean it carries light. For an example, a ritual looks beautiful but leaves you feeling drained and physically open. So, to embody this teaching, listen to your body. True sacredness restores and fortifies. Now, moving on to discernment in dreams and astral encounters. Now, this lesson talks about how not every dream is prophetic. Some are psychic spam or manipulations by lower entities. So, for an example, Reoccurring dreams with someone toxic showing up as your twin flame. To embody this teaching, call in your protectors before rest and ask, Spirit of truth, show me only what is aligned with my highest path. Now, moving on to the trap of identity attachments. So, even sacred robes can be cages if you're not evolving. So, for an example, you're clinging to being the healer, but your soul is shifting into the warrior. Now, to embody this teaching, allow your essence to expand. You are not your title. You are a living embodiment of Yahweh's breath. Now, moving on to discernment between true light and false light frequencies. So, this lesson talks about how false light mimics truth with perfectionism, spiritual bypassing, and love bombing. It blinds you with brilliance, but blocks intimacy with Yahweh. So, for an example, right, a light worker claims they only operate from love, yet denies or avoids all shadow integration. So, to embody this teaching. So, trust the voice that trembles before truth, not the one that performs it. Truth humbles, false light performs. Hey, thank you for joining the live. So, moving on to discernment and sacred intimacy, the spiritual seduction. So, some unions feel electric, but are trauma mirrors disguised as soulmates. So, you feel fated and spiritually high around them, but the connection depletes, confuses, or leads you into obsession. So, to embody this teaching, ask, does this connection bring peace and elevation, or chaos and spiritual compromise? Real love grounds. Hey, thank you for the follow. So, the real twin flame activates alignment. The false ones keep you chasing. So, moving on to mimic frequency bonds. So, some spiritual connections imitate your soul frequency to hijack your evolution. So, for an example, you meet someone with the same spiritual language, signs, or dreams, but they drain you, trigger ego battles, or keep you in cycles. Hey, thank you for the gifts. Thank you for the follow. Hey, thank you for joining the live. Now, to embody this teaching, call back your true resonance. Pray, Spirit of discernment, seal my aura. No mimic may wear my codes. So, moving on to discernment between divine grace and spiritual enabling. Hey, thank you for the follow. So, grace uplifts, enabling stagnates. So, for an example, you constantly give second chances out of compassion, but nothing changes. So, to embody this lesson. So, speak the truth in love, say no, that is grace too. So, discerning frequency entrapments. Now, darker energies can trap you in emotional loops that feel deep or intense, but are actually just distractions. So, for an example, you're constantly looping and healing without ever ascending. So, to embody this teaching, recognize when healing becomes identity. Healing is a passage, not a destination. So, moving on to discernment with spirit guides. So, not all guides are light beings. Some are astral imposters feeding off of your openness. So, for an example, spirit guide tells you to rely on them constantly or gives advice that disconnects you from your intuition. So, to embody this teaching, ask your guides, do you serve the Most High and walk in the frequency of Yahweh's truth? If they hesitate, cut the cord. So, moving on to discernment in your own voice. So, sometimes the voice in your head isn't you. It's a programmed echo, trauma, or spiritual interference. Now, for an example, you hear persistent self-sabotaging thoughts that don't feel like your soul's truth. Now, to embody this teaching, ask, is this voice rooted in fear, shame, or control, or is it rooted in freedom, honor, and clarity? Then you speak your true name over the lie. Hey, thank you for joining the live. So, moving on to discernment, collective propaganda, and trends. So, this lesson highlights how even spirituality has trends. Some are distractions dressed in ascension. So, for an example, right? You feel pressure to activate light codes or unlock DNA or channel aliens without integration or grounding, right? So to embody this teaching, you don't need to be trendy. You need to be true. So your path is sacred, not performative. So hopefully with this class, with the discernment codes, this is the continuation for the past 3 days. We're going to keep continuing. Let's see here. Monday through Friday, every night at 10 p.m. We're going to continue talking more about divine discernment. So tonight's class basically pulled back the veil from the illusions that keep us bound by revealing the deeper mechanics of spiritual manipulation, mimic frequencies, and deception masked as light. So together we pierce through the false masks and return to the sacred flame of the inner knowing. So we learned how discerning between true light and false light, learning how even good vibes can be a disguise. So we also learned how exposed spiritual seduction and trauma mirroring and sacred intimacy, distinguishing true unions from karmic loops. We also learned how understanding mimic frequency bonds that imitate soul resonance but drain your energy and evolution. Also learned how breaking cycles of enabling disguised disgrace and learning when no is the highest vibration. So we also learned how calling out frequency entrapments that keep you in endless healing loops with no breakthroughs. We also learned how identifying spirit guide imposters in the astral and reclaiming sovereignty with the Most High. So we also learned unmasking the false inner voice and aligning back to your divine essence voice. And we also learned how rejecting spiritual trends and collective distractions in favor of personal alignment. So, this class was a callback to power, clarity, and warrior level spiritual hygiene. So, you were reminded that discernment is not judgment, it's divine protection. Hey, appreciate the follow, appreciate the likes, appreciate the gifts, you guys. So you are not here to second guess your knowing. You're also not here to be seduced by false peace. You are here to see, feel, and embody truth at all costs. So this is going to be your assignment for integration. So what you'll need to do is journal any moments where your soul felt drained or confused, whether that be in relationships, spiritual guidance, or decision makings. Then you will write a new contract to your higher self stating, I vow to follow only what uplifts, sharpens, and frees my soul. So that is what I have for you guys tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed. So I hope you guys all learned something. I hope you guys grow wiser with your discernment and your choices in life and watch your reality shift for the better. So just want to hear more, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll be sharing more. I'll be sharing this live. I'll be making clips of it, posting in the morning. Definitely, for sure, you guys. Absolutely, you're welcome. I appreciate all the follows, you guys. Heck yeah. Got you too late. Have a good night. Absolutely, you have a good night too, man. Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I appreciate the follows. Appreciate the likes. Appreciate the follows. Oh, snap. Thanks for the crown. Yeah, I appreciate it. The class is getting bigger. Yeah, that's cool. Everybody's popping in. I mean, there's nothing wrong with learning discernment. I mean, we all need it. We could all learn something. Absolutely. Alrighty, you guys. Man. Definitely. Oh, man. Well, let me know in the comments on my videos, you guys, what else you'd like to learn or whatever, or what other spiritual tips or knowledge you guys are seeking. Different ways of discernment. I studied all the peoples. Everybody thought I was dumb for being quiet. Here I am just like studying everybody. It's so cool, but yeah. But anyways, I'm gonna hop off here, you guys. I'm gonna get some Z's, do some self-care. So I appreciate the follow. Stay tuned for more content tomorrow, you guys. I'll keep posting clips. I'll actually post this on my YouTube. So stay tuned for the replays, the highlights. Good night, everybody. Deuces.